Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Vinny Costa, editor of Street Muscle Magazine and your host of the RodCAST, the all-encompassing car show where we talk about all things automotive. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, Greg Acosta, editor of Engine Labs and the all-around tech guru. What's up, Greg?
Hey, Vinny, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Doing well. Another exciting week under our belts here. So by the time this airs, it will be Friday at noon, like always. Yeah, man, a lot of things cooking over here. A lot of episodes shot this week. We got more on the horizon, a lot of new exciting guests. And today, our audience will be regaled with tales from a guest that they know and love, Rob Finkelman.
Yeah, I think he has the record now, right?
Yeah. So Jeff Smith has been on 3, and this will be Rob's 3rd episode.
Oh,
so I think
okay.
we got that wrong. Yeah, I thought that Rob had the record, but I guess he'll be tied for this with this episode.
Yeah, I swear to God, we're getting into like the SNL stuff.
Yeah, dude. Who has a record on SNL? It's got to be Baldwin, right?
Like I have any idea these days.
It's got to be Baldwin. I mean, he's almost a cast member now.
Well, he's been almost a cast member since like 94.
Yeah, exactly. He's hilarious. But yeah, man. So the reason that Rob is back today, other than the fact that we love the guy, he's always fun to have on the show. But the reason that he's back on today is because an article went live just a couple days ago that he's known for. He has multiple columns on Street Muscle Magazine, but one that people seem to really love is Rare Rides, and that's where he takes an examination of how a very rare automobile came to be. This week it happens to be, you know what? I'll wait and we'll get into that during the episode. So stay tuned, everybody. This episode was brought to you with the help of Performance Distributors, the company that allows you to feel the difference, not just ignite a spark. Well, what does that mean exactly? Well, their ignition systems are designed and manufactured under the most stringent of guidelines. In fact, the owner, Steve Davis, told us their systems are designed as if they're running them on their own vehicles. And that's because they are. But one of the products you may already know them for is their line of DUI distributors, the first and one of the best HEI distributors on the market. Their machine calibrated timing curves provide instant throttle response and eliminate engine damaging detonation. Now, for those of you with late model vehicles, their Sultans of Spark ignition coils are based on the DUI technology, so they too can accommodate a wider plug gap when firing out more voltage. So check out performancedistributors.com for all your ignition needs. That's performancedistributors.com. Dude, yep. Rob Finkelman, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, dude.
Howdy, everybody. Good to be here again.
Dude, you're officially the record holder for the RodCAST.
Wow.
Appearance number 3.
Wow, I'm like the Alec Baldwin of Saturday Night Live, right?
What is he up to now? Like, I know
he's hosted like 20 times or something like that. He's the outright record.
He was at like 13 when I stopped watching.
Yeah.
And John Goodman was up there at like 12 or something.
Goodman, Tom Hanks was a big one, but I think Baldwin has the out and out record now. But for RodCAST, it's all me.
Great, so, man. That's you.
Very proud of
that's so funny that you bring that up, because earlier Greg and I were talking about Saturday Night Live, Mad TV, and In Living Color, and I was telling him that I think that people typically over-romanticize the Belushi era and overlook the 90s era with Will Ferrell and Chris Kattan.
I'd agree on half of that and disagree with the other half. You can't underappreciate John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase and the original Not Ready for Primetime Players. But I will agree with you that there is an underappreciation for the 90s. Phil Hartman alone.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, my God, the guy was just like the bedrock of that entire show, you know?
For sure. But you know what's interesting? It's his so out of his whole catalog, it's his work on the Simpsons writing and stuff that I really love. And conversely, all those guys that you mentioned from the like Aykroyd and Chevy Chase and all those dudes. It was their stuff outside of Saturday Night Live that I really loved. Their movies, that were fantastic.
You know, they sort of set the framework for what goes on today, that you put in like a few years at Saturday Night Live and then you get your big movie deal. And then you leave Saturday Night Live abruptly.
What happened to that?
Yeah, and just become a big movie star. For Belushi, obviously, it was Animal House and the Blues Brothers. For Chevy Chase, he did a movie. It was with Goldie Hawn.
No.
And there's actually a good car chase in it. I should consider it for a.
Was it Fletch?
No,
this
Goldie
was
Hawn.
like,
It was
early 80s, like,
yeah.
or late 70s, maybe. This is going to torture me.
I'm going to go to the Google machine.
Yeah,
Greg, let's see if we can pull it up on Google. I love Chase's movies. Out of all of them, which one's your favorite?
Probably the one that we're talking about. If for some reason I'm having a mental block on the name of it.
What's the one that he did?
Foul Play. If you haven't seen it out there, that's a funny movie. It's great. And Goldie Hawn in her prime, she was like, oh man, to look at her
Total
for
babe,
2 hours. It was a really funny movie, and there's a pretty good car chase in it down the streets of San Francisco. He plays a cop, and I haven't seen it in many years, but there's like some murder case involving the Archbishop of in that area, and so on and so forth.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I should precursor this for our viewers who are just tuning in. If you're not familiar with Rob and his work, I mean, he's been on 2 other episodes of the RodCAST. I highly suggest you go check out those episodes because they're fantastic. But before he ever came on the RodCAST, he's been a columnist for Street Muscle Magazine for a very long time, penning 3 notable columns, although many more. Rare Rides, which we're going to talk about today, Rob's car movie review, and Rob's movie Muscle. So all of those fantastic articles, go over to Street Muscle Magazine, streetmusclemag.com, and head them up because they're really good. But today we're going to talk specifically about Rare Rides because it's been a fan favorite.
And my favorite as well. I've said that more than once before. My absolute favorite column.
I wanted to precursor that with that information if you're new to the show and new to Rob's work, because he is our resident muscle aficionado, but also before that he's a big film buff, right? So he went to NYU Film School. Rob, I'll let you list your long list of accolades, but he's an expert.
Worked in the film industry for about 20 years in various capacities, writing, producing, directing documentaries, you name it, from production assistant on up.
So that's why we were going off on a little bit of a tangent about Saturday Night Live and some of the movies. So.
Yeah. So anytime there's you get me started talking about movies, it's hard to shut me down. So
movies and cars, dude.
Movies and cars.
It has been such a pleasure for me to edit your work, especially Rare Rides, because like you, I learned so much as I'm reading them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually, before we started the episode today, I asked you, hey, maybe we should take a little bit of a different approach to today's episode because your fans really enjoy Rare Rides. We get such good feedback. I thought I would take this month's Rare Rides and we could work through it, read some sections, and then you could elaborate a little bit on your thought process as you were writing it. And then once we get to the tech sections of the article, we'll ask Greg to chime in just on,
good old Greg.
His opinion.
Good old Greg. Yeah, that sounds great.
Cool,
a little bit of a change for this episode of the RodCAST. I like it.
And don't worry, guys. We will make time for all that really fun, movie and SNL talk after we're done.
Okay.
So
that's good.
You guys want to jump into it?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Okay, cool. No pressure. All right.
No pressure.
I was talking to myself. All right, so this month's Rare Rides is the 1969 Hurst Olds Convertible. Is one sec. So we'll kick it off. I'll read a short section and then we'll have your thoughts on it, Rob.
Mhm.
So when one thinks of classic muscle cars, a variety of brands immediately springs to mind. Ford, Plymouth, Dodge, Pontiac, Chevrolet, and even certain AMC models recall ethereal visions of smoky burnouts, cacophonous exhaust notes, and stoplight racing glory.
I got to put him upstairs. Is that all
No
right?
worries, man. Yeah, we can cut. And then, Greg, you want to make a note, and then we'll just take it from where I started reading. Is that cool?
It would help if I had started the timer. So, but it's pretty obvious when I get to the point where Rob's not there.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
As long as there's visual reference, like it's usually pretty easy.
Oh shit!
It was being so
funny.
good until you started.
I know, that was so funny.
Like the worst timing. All right, let's take two, as they say, right?
Where's the clapboard?
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. I'll just take it from where I started reading, Greg.
Okay.
Right. When one thinks of classic muscle cars, a variety of brands immediately spring to mind. Ford, Plymouth, Dodge, Pontiac, Chevrolet, and even certain AMC models recall ethereal visions of smoky burnouts, cacophonous exhaust notes, and stoplight racing glory. One mark that rarely evokes these images, though, is Oldsmobile. Usually thought of as a company that built boat-sized boulevard cruisers for geriatric folks who couldn't afford Cadillacs, even many erudite muscle car enthusiasts would be hard-pressed to point to a performance-oriented Olds beyond the venerable 442. But I'm here to tell you, there was an Olds that was powerful and rare enough to grace the pages of this column, and the convertible version was, in fact, one of the scarcest muscle cars in history. The car? The 1969 Hurst Olds Convertible, the focus of this month's Rare Rides. Well done, Rob.
Thank you, sir.
Very well done. And you nailed it, honestly. As you're going through that, I'm sitting there going, he nailed it. That's my grandma. My grandma had a 78 Cutlass.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, that's why I struggle with whole Oldsmobile as muscle cars.
Yeah.
Because to me, that was my grandma's car.
Sure, they had the corner on the old folks. And Cadillac turned into that kind of brand as well for a while. And kudos to them for reinventing themselves with the CTS and, moving forward around the year 2000 or 99 or so. I read somewhere back in the 90s, the average age of a Cadillac owner was like 58 years old, which is crazy.
So now the only reason it was that low is because all the drug dealers.
I guess drug dealers, or it just became associated with, you're at the end of your life and you've got money to burn because you don't want to give it to your snot-nosed kids. I'm going to blow it on a Cadillac. So, but Olds was, heading in that direction too. And thankfully, they realized they had everything at their disposal to compete, even with their own stablemates at GM, like Pontiac and Chevy. And
dude, it's so funny because Greg and I were talking about just this very same thing earlier, and he was mentioning that on Engine Labs they did a list of the largest engines, right, Greg? And you were saying that Cadillac was among like just dispersed throughout that list quite a bit.
Yeah.
Massive engines, but ones that only, a 6-point something liter engine, but it would only put out like 200 horsepower. And managed to get 12 miles to the gallon at the same time.
It was not a good time for technology.
No, it was not. The American car industry was heading down some weird roads, and I think the Japanese imports really back in the 70s, like Toyota in particular, and Honda really, gave American car makers a good smack to the face and say, hey,
about what they had to compete with too, right? Like by then you had reached the Colonnade years for GM cars, and so they weren't as stylish or as sporty as what was
They were-
around in years past.
Let's be honest, like when the muscle car era ended because of the gas prices and stricter EPA regulations. So we're talking really like 71 was really the last hurrah for large capacity, horsepower to the nth degree cars. After that year, like between 72 and I'd say like really well into the 1980s, maybe as far as the late 80s, American cars were just garbage. You had, let's be honest. I mean, you had holdouts like Lincoln Town cars and Continentals were really plush, nice cars, and Cadillacs always had, luxury, throughout. But your average Chevrolet, man, or Plymouth for that matter. I mean, like Chrysler cars were just scraping the bottom of the barrel. And had been, let's face it, even in the muscle car era, like my end all be all favorite muscle car of all time would have to be like a 70 Hemi Cuda. That's a piece of garbage, with a massive, like just kick-ass engine. But in terms of interior appointments and stuff, like Chrysler was not making good cars, and as I said, really, Honda just and Toyota and whatnot started giving the American market a real spanking and told them, you got to wake up. And thankfully they did. And now there's a number of American cars, I'd say, that can compete with foreign imports,
Without a doubt. Yeah.
Let's put it this way, dude. If the new C8 Corvette didn't have the word Corvette written on it, that car could very easily pass styling-wise and performance-wise for an Italian supercar. Like I've seen them on the road, and at first glance, I was like, "What's that?" If they're coming the other way towards me. I've seen a couple of C8s like on PCH, and at first I was like, "Oh, Ferrari, Lamborghini, what's that?" And
they definitely have the same styling for sure.
Oh yeah, and that can compete definitely. And I think there are some brands of the even sedans and SUVs. I mean, America makes pretty much the best SUVs these days, I would argue.
Yeah, they've really bridged that gap as far as production value is concerned on the inside and out.
Absolutely.
But at this time, 1969, we're not quite there yet. Americans are still at the top of the heap.
That is true.
And Oldsmobile sought to kind of change their outward appearance to the American culture, right? That's the contention of the...
I think the big thing really was towards the mid to late 60s, their competitors, i.e. Chrysler, Ford, were put, like, out of the big three, Chrysler and Ford were really putting out like no holds bars muscle cars, and they were selling like hotcakes. We all know the story of the original 64 Ford Mustang, which sold, or 64 and a half, I should say, sold hundreds of thousands of units. They couldn't make them fast enough. And, as the decade wore on, they started turning, the Mustang, which was originally really a pony car. It wasn't overpowered by any means. Shelby started shoving 428 police interceptors in it. And then you had the Boss 302 and the Boss 429 and the Mach 1. By the end of the 60s, Ford was making some serious muscle cars. And we all know that Mopar, that was their bread and butter, between Chargers, Challengers.
Still is, yeah.
Cudas, yeah. And I think GM, because of something that you'll probably read to us next, got left behind in that chase. And even their top muscle offerings, like a GTO, Pontiac GTO, just couldn't compete in the latter part of the 60s with the offerings from Ford and Chrysler. So
definitely,
it was time for them to change if they wanted to cash in on this muscle car craze. And at the same time, we were talking about, average age of their customers. They wanted to do something about that. And they saw muscle cars really as the ticket to the youth market, and young people buy cars. It's a big segment of the automotive market.
Let's read on.
Yeah, please, by all means.
Okay. So a little history beyond what we were discussing. Rob goes on to say, Oldsmobile, one of the earliest car companies in the world, was founded by Ransom Olds, cool name by the way, in 1897, and until the brand's shut down in 2004, produced close to 40 million vehicles. In addition to its grand success and longevity, the company was also renowned for the many firsts it brought to the American automobile industry, which included the first turbocharged engine and the first front-wheel drive platform. The 1960s were the golden age for the brand, with popularity, design, and sales approaching their zenith. Olds was, however, like all the other divisions of General Motors, hamstrung in the performance department by an unusual edict that was instituted by the automaker in the early part of the decade. The story behind it had its origins in the mid-1950s when auto racing was gaining in popularity and the technology developed on the track began trickling down to road cars. Suddenly, the name of the game was Race on Sunday, Sell on Monday, as automakers sought to capitalize on motorsport success to sell more cars. Advertisements began to focus on performance, and horsepower numbers in street vehicles began to rise exponentially. Sadly, with this steady rise in power, the number of serious accidents and fatalities on the roads of America began to mount. This, along with the James Dean's highly publicized death behind the wheel of a sports car in 1955, the demise of Bill Vukovich, in that year's Indy 500, and the death of 80 spectators at the 24 Hours of Le Mans just 2 weeks later, prompted concern from many figures in the auto industry. They realized that if these trends continued, it would only be a matter of time before federal authorities came down hard on the manufacturers. Interesting. Rob, what do you know about the that whole thing with James Dean's death, Bill Vukovich, and 80 spectators at the 24-hour Le Mans?
Yeah, 80. That's a big number.
Yeah, it was a terrible thing, and I've actually, unfortunately, YouTube has, I'm a huge car racing fan. I'm real into Formula One. I'm into IndyCar and stuff, and I really don't watch races to see people, crash and burn.
There's a big crash in NASCAR over the weekend.
Yes, there was. I saw that. It red flagged the Daytona 500 for like 5 hours or something like that. Well, the rain did that, but it was initially started by, it was like a 15-car pileup, I think.
It was nasty, man.
But unfortunately, what I was going to say was that YouTube actually has a clip of that incident in Le Mans, and it was horrible. And you could blame, racing's an inherently dangerous venture for drivers, and if not properly, if there aren't proper safety measures in place, it can be devastating for spectators as well. And in those days, they didn't have catch fences. They didn't, they lacked.
It was like hay bales or something, right? Like if you're lucky.
They just lacked certain imagination of what could happen if a car got airborne. And sadly, a Jaguar D-Type got airborne at 180 miles an hour on the front straight and went careening into the crowd and killed 80 people. And it was seen, worldwide. It was seen in Europe live because they always broadcast Le Mans live, and it was just devastating. And Vukovich, who was a very popular driver, died in a terrible crash as well. Unfortunately, that's on YouTube too. And his car went catapulting over the side barrier, the sidewall, and he was pretty much killed instantly. And James Dean, as we all know, died in a certain Porsche 550 Spider up in Northern California on his way to a racetrack where he was planning to race that car for the first time. And if you guys read the article, you'll notice there's a link when we mentioned James Dean's passing. And that links to one of the first articles I ever wrote for Street Muscle. I think it's back in 2014, something like that, 2015, about how that particular car really had a curse to it, that James Dean was not the only person who fell afoul of that 550 Spider. And it's kind of a ghost story, but based in fact. So it's well worth clicking on that and reading
Definitely
about James Dean's demise. But the whole thing was really that horsepower technology was rising exponentially. Their ability to churn more horses out of a similar sized cubic capacity was on the rise, mostly due to racing and technologies coming out of racing. And that was trickling down to the cars on the road that the manufacturers made. And the difference being that, professional race car drivers are able to handle large amounts of horsepower and know, things associated with it in terms of oversteer, understeer, stuff like that. But your average Joe on US 101 didn't. And so the cars were getting more powerful, yet the level of driving ability amongst your average American was not. And it was resulting in really, really record numbers of deaths and just accidents in general.
It's important to note too that this was well before the days of any type of driver assists or
even seatbelts weren't mandatory.
Safety.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
let's be 100% honest here. A driver assist back then was having the wet bar in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was the driver assist.
Yeah, pretty much. Having your beers very close behind beside you was considered a safety feature, so you wouldn't have to reach for them, you see. So it was a combination of racing technology, but being implemented in streetcars, but also a lack of safety, a progression in safety on streetcars. And
the reason I ask is just because I think it kind of sets the tone, right? Like it paints a picture that these automakers were under an extreme amount of pressure to, provide either more safety or less danger, right?
Yeah, I mean, and really the pressure was on both sides because there was a formidable horsepower war going on. And every auto manufacturer needed, at the very least, to stay in touch with its competitors, if not constantly try and top them. And then from the other side, you have the federal government, which is starting to say, whoa, you can't kill people, in your race to claim that you have the most powerful V8 engine. And what ultimately transpired was that safety measures did start to make their way into streetcars, seatbelts in particular. The Tucker automobile was famous. Even though it was a failed venture, Tucker understood the need, the importance of safety in getting people to purchase particular cars, because it's not only speed, you want to get there in one piece. And so the Tucker had radical, even for today, some pretty radical safety features on it. For example, on the Tucker, he put headlights that turned with the steering wheel. So if you were going around a corner, the headlights were preceding you. And that didn't show up again really until the mid-2000s, like European cars, BMWs. I had a BMW with that technology on it many years ago. I think it was like a 2004.
Yeah, I remember seeing the ads for those. Like it was like some new technology, and it was oh wow, it's so advanced.
Like the 50s when Tucker, made that car, and he made seatbelts mandatory on all of his cars.
Did you ever see that old, like that vintage ad for like seatbelts, but it's around the neck?
The neck, yeah, right. Yeah, that didn't age well, did it? But but I mean, Tucker really was ahead of his time The steering wheel in those cars was deformable. So like James Dean in particular died because he was impaled on the steering column. It shattered his rib cage and his
Sternum,
thorax, his sternum. And also you had Ralph Nader came on scene, largely because of problems with the Corvair that deserves its own episode or conversation.
We might have to revisit that.
But Ralph Nader wrote a book called Unsafe at Any Speed, in which he showed, it was for its era, it was akin to like the whistleblowers in the tobacco industry in the 90s, where, they were, automakers were hooking you on speed and acceleration and all this stuff, but they were killing people because these were unsafe, as Nader said, really at any speed. Big tombs of cars with no crumple zones, no seat belts, no nothing. And between that book and the innovations of Tucker with his automobile, safety did start to trickle into the picture. But at the period we're talking about, mid to late 50s, there was just nothing. American cars in particular, were really death traps.
Well, by 1969, they had already implemented, the use of safety belts and things like that. And there were some safety features that we'll get into. But I think we've set the scene. So let's read on.
Sure.
Okay. So for GM in particular, the pressure reached its breaking point in 1963. Robert Kennedy's Justice Department was eyeing the corporation for antitrust action, and in an attempt to assuage the Attorney General's ire, a decision was made by the top GM brass. All divisions would cease their racing activities, and nothing other than full-sized cars could be equipped with an engine larger than 400 cubic inches. The lone exception to this order was the Corvette, which would be available with 427s during the decade. The result of this was that General Motors performance cars, such as the Pontiac GTO, were, by and large, having their lunch eaten by their competition. By the decade's end, Mustangs, Cudas, Challengers, and Chargers were sporting massive 426, 428, 429, and 440 cubic inch monsters under the hood, with outputs exceeding 400 ponies in some. GM had no answer for these cars. Both Chevy, in the form of the 1969 Camaro Copo ZL1, which you can find a link to in this article, and Oldsmobile would ultimately find a way around this problem. For Olds, the journey would actually begin just a year after the 400 cubic inch ban with the introduction of the 442. Initially introduced in 1964 as an option package for Cutlass and F85 models, the 442 was Oldsmobile's response to its division mate Pontiac's success with the Le Mans GTO package. Developed by Olds engineers John Belts, Bob Dorshemer, and Dale Smith, the 442, named for its four-bell carb, four-speed manual, and dual exhausts, was internally known as the B09 Police Apprehender Pursuit Package. Okay, I want to stop right there because that's really cool.
The Police Apprehender Pursuit Package, yeah. The only thing that I always loved, we touched upon it before, but the Shelby GT500 had a 428 Police Interceptor. I always dug that nomenclature for that engine as well.
It's very cool.
They kept that on all the way through the Crown Vics, and
yeah, sure.
Unfortunately, we lost that, I believe, when
No, I think the Explorers are interceptors.
The what?
I think the Explorers are interceptors, aren't they?
Are they?
Yeah.
I know they have like some special name. They're not technically Explorers, but
they might be like Pursuit or something like that.
Yeah, police pursuit vehicles, I think, PPVs.
Yeah. Well, Beverly Hills uses Explorers now, I think, and you see them
they're pretty great, man. I don't know if you guys have ever driven one, but I drove one, and the PPV package too, and they're really nice. I like them.
Yeah. I would absolutely drive one every day. I just spend the money on one.
So I stopped here because not only is that nomenclature really cool, but Rob, so we haven't even gotten to like the feature car yet. But I love your articles because I already, I'm learning stuff. And for the casual muscle car enthusiast, I think they'll learn a lot. Just we're not even, we're like a quarter way through the article, and already, you've defined the 442, which I think a lot of people don't understand. Was not for the cubic inches, but for the carburetor, the exhaust, and the 4-speed. Which is totally cool.
Yeah, I and Rare Rides, you afford me the a lengthier feature with Rare Rides than my other columns, and I really like to use that extra space in terms of word count to really delve into the origins of these cars. I find this stuff fascinating because not one of the muscle cars that I've covered it was never on a whim. There were forces behind why it was made, how it sort of gestated from one model to another. And this was certainly one of the cars that I've focused on in the column that did really have a lengthy genesis behind it. It started with the first 442. And, they started thinking, they knew right away they were in trouble in terms of this ban. Pontiac in particular was in deep doo-doo because Pontiac was sort of the sporty division of GM.
Well, I'm curious, Rob. So people know, you mentioned their stablemate, right? Pontiac, and people know John DeLorean as like the guy who kind of turned things around over there. They brought him on. He was a young, exciting guy, and he made, the GTO happen, right? Which many people credit as the first muscle car.
Sure.
So then you mentioned some of the guys that were a part of the team that developed the 442. It looks like John Beltz, Bob Dorshemer, and Dale Smith. What can you tell us about those guys? Because those are definitely names that I've heard before, and I think a lot of people will be familiar with.
Yeah, GM at that time had, I'd argue, probably the most talented stable of automotive engineers, even though they were being outclassed in certain ways by Chrysler and Ford. The brain power, if you will, over at GM was really second to none. And you see these guys, same guys, their names crop up associated with cars in all the divisions of GM, because oftentimes they were shuttled off. Oh, he's moving to Chevy, or he's moving to Pontiac, and so forth. And in this case, the 442 was a real departure for Oldsmobile because they had been mostly known for big sedans and stuff. And here comes the 442, which in a lot of ways was essentially a Chevelle. It shared a lot of parts and just overall design idea with a Chevelle. It even looked like a Chevelle.
The GMA body. Yeah.
The GMA body. And so you'll see the same engineers, on board on all sorts of projects. I don't know what in particular you wanted to.
No, I was just curious, if you knew anything about it, because I a lot of people know about John DeLorean, but like to your point, there were a lot of guys floating around GM that worked on different projects. Specifically, I think they remember him because he was a young guy at the time, and they entrusted him with a lot of responsibility.
Absolutely. And DeLorean in particular, his time at GM, he hit one ball out of the park after another. He really never had, a colossal failure with a car that just didn't sell. He kind of had the Midas touch, and anything that he was interested in, he sort of after a while had the clout to buck things up the ladder. So if he was getting resistance by the executives immediately above him, he was able to bypass them and go to the brass and say,
exactly,
hey, we should do this,
I think, and I love the origin story of how he kind of did that, right? Like swipes his boss's car and swaps the engine while he's at lunch.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, those shenanigans could go on in those days. Not so much today, where every penny is accounted for, and you don't do stuff like that. But I will say, I've met Ralph Gilles from SRT and some of the guys over there, and they had a fair amount of shenanigans going on at Dodge, even up until recently. Now, Ralph Gilles, I think, has been switched to SRT in like something weird. They gave him like South America or something like that. He's no longer, but Mark Trossel and all those guys at Chrysler, those are car guys,
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
If you guys aren't following Mark on Instagram, follow Mark Trossel. I think his Instagram handle is Trossel Mark.
Yeah.
He's worth a follow. He's constantly posting fantastic car content.
Yeah, these are car guys, and it sort of heralds back to the era of John DeLorean in a lot of ways. I go every year. I've covered it for the magazine, of course. Every year, COVID years aside, I go to the Spring Fling Challenger and Charger Fest in Orange County, California, and I used to bring my Challenger and all that. And Mark Trossel, Ralph Gilles, all those guys that show up. And they were checking out what people were doing to their cars. And it got to the point where the last Spring Fling that we had, Spring Fest rather, not Spring Fling, they at the SRT, the corporate tent, they actually had all these color samples under the tent. And everybody was given a voter form. And you could check off what you thought were the coolest colors. And 3 or 4 of them have made their way into production just based on what Ralph and Mark Trossel found from our votes at Springfest.
What was that?
Pretty cool, yeah.
That is market research that is worth its weight in gold.
Gold. You connect with the hardcore followers of your brand and you say, what color would you like to see the next Hellcat in? And they did, let's see, Smoke Show, which is a new color for the Challenger and Charger.
Oh, yeah.
The Spring Fest. The gold color on the 50th anniversary Challenger came out of Spring Fest. Hell Raisin, which is like a purple, came out of Spring Fest. So it's pretty cool. Triple Nickel also, which is a silver color.
In recent years, nobody's done it better than Dodge. They know their market, and it's because of things like that. Yeah. But right now we're talking GM. So I want to get back to the article. All right, let's pick up where we left off. We're talking about the 442, which is the precursor to what we're going to get into. Okay, so the car featured a 330 cubic inch V8 bequeathed with a dual snorkel intake, a hot camshaft, and an upgraded valve train that was good for 310 horsepower and 355 pound-feet of twist. Also included in the package was a Muncie 4-speed and a 336-to-1 rear. Magazine tests revealed a respectable 7.5 second sprint to 60 and a 15.5 second quarter mile at 91 miles an hour. After 4 years of steady sales, the decision was made to make the 442 an independent model in the Olds lineup. And the 1968 model was an entirely new car with a sleek exterior design and a fresh interior. Under the hood, Olds pushed the GM edict to the max with a new 400 cubic inch, 350 horsepower, 4-barrel carbureted V8 mated to a 3 or 4-speed manual or a turbo hydromatic slush box. Other niceties included bucket seats, front and rear anti-roll bars, boxed rear lower control arms, and 442 badging. Options included custom sport wheels, rally stripes, rally pack instruments, front power disc brakes, and the W30 force air induction system package. Okay, performance was good with 342-to-1 equipped cars capable of 0 to 60 times of 7 seconds, shaved to half a second. That's nice. And a quarter mile time of 15.1 seconds at 92. Picked up a mile an hour. That's awesome. But Olds wasn't satisfied. They wanted a car that could compete with the likes of the aforementioned muscle monsters from Dodge, Plymouth, and Ford. At the same time, this is where it gets really interesting. George Hurst, a heavy-duty shifter fame, was toying with the idea of building his own ultimate muscle car. Hurst had attempted to purchase a series of Pontiac Firebirds with the idea of fitting them with 428 cubic inch motors and a variety of Hurst toys, and then selling them back to Pontiac for dealer distribution. This would, in effect, enable Pontiac to circumnavigate the 400 cubic inch limit and provide George with his car. Okay, I want to stop right there. Dude. Okay, so to go from, like this sub model, the 442, this pick up a half a second, 0 to 60, and then almost another half a second in the quarter and a full mile per hour in 1 year, just by changing like the dual snorkel intake and rear end gear swap. Like, that's pretty badass.
Oh yeah. They were serious. They were up against the wall, and that's when people get serious typically, because at the same time in '68, let's see, there was already there were cars equipped with Hemis, 426 Hemis. There were the aforementioned 428 Police Interceptor Shelbys. You were on the verge. I think, was it 69 was the Boss 302 and 429 the first year. And
yes,
so there was serious horsepower out there, and they knew we got to do something about this. And the top brass at GM was really resolute about that 400 cubic inch band. And in those days, turbocharging and stuff wasn't an avenue to get power out of a smaller capacity engine. It's
like, what are you going to do? Swap out your carb and put some headers on it?
You basically had to go this way on your pistons, or that way on your, or this way on your pistons to get more power. With the exception of swapping out a carb and, gearing and stuff like that. There was no, there was really no, what's the phrase? There was no something for displacement, no
replacement.
Thank you. I was mental block. Yeah. So they started to get serious, but as we'll see, the big thing was getting around that 400 cubic inch band, and I think that's what we're leading up to now.
Definitely. Before we get there, though, Greg, I'm curious. So, these guys they're hamstrung by this 400 cubic inch band, right? Without the aid in like a power adder, like turbo or a supercharger, is there any way to, I guess, get around that to make more power without re-engineering the entire engine?
Back then, no.
Yeah.
I mean, you could add compression, but gas wasn't nearly as good back then as it is today. You literally would be pushing someone to be running either avgas or, the race gas of the time. Plus, back then, raising compression was usually through a pop-up piston. And I say pop-up, not, domed, because they literally just put a nice thing that gets in the way of the flame front. So I think for daily driving, more compression would have caused a lot of problems.
Yeah.
So realistically, I would say, I mean, again, not having lived then, but no, they didn't have any options.
And really the only other option for making a car faster, aside from more power, has always been true, which is make the car lighter. Yeah. But because safety was, there were mandates coming about safety, it started to get into the situation where we are today, where it's really hard to make a car light, because more and more things were becoming mandatory equipment on cars, like crumple zones came shortly thereafter. I know in the 70 Cudas and Challengers, the hoods had crumple zones built into them. And that requires more than one sheet of steel. To make a crumple zone, you got 2 layers going, and that adds weight. And so they were really caught between a rock and a hard place. They had a ceiling on their displacement, and that was that. So what are you going to do about it?
Let's find out how old George and Olds got around this. Okay, so he's looking for his to build his super muscle car. While Pontiac's John DeLorean was enthused by the project, General Motors' top executives were less so. If such an endeavor was to occur, they reasoned it should happen at Oldsmobile, which desperately needed a hit with the youth market. A deal was struck between Oldsmobile and Hurst, with Hurst's Jack Doc Watson overseeing production. After some fits and starts, 515 standard 1968 model year Olds 442s were delivered to Lansing-based Demmer Engineering, which was subcontracted by Hurst to do the conversion into what would be known as the Hurst Olds. The cars would be powered by two versions of Oldsmobile's massive 455 cubic inch V8 motors, with one specifically for AC equipped cars. To keep the GM brass happy, it was purported that Demmer would be responsible for pulling the 400s from the cars and installing the 455s. But in actuality, the reverse was true, with the cars secretly leaving the GM factory with the larger engines already installed. Isn't that awesome?
I love that. That's something I never knew before. But, you know, it was determined it would be such a hassle to send these cars with engines that had to be pulled, then to ship back to GM and stuff. They said, screw that, just put the 455s in and be quiet about it. And that's how they left the factory.
I love that, because at this time it's like, okay, you know, the only people that were doing any espionage were like fighting the Cold War, you know. It wasn't, you know, the people within your company, there wasn't, you know, there wasn't gonna be any leaks. No one had smartphones. Like, you could get away with stuff, you know, like, yeah, just you guys do it and send it.
Yeah, exactly.
And what year are we in right now?
68. We're prepping for the 69 model year, which was the first year of the whole Hurst Olds.
Because I'm trying to remember when the DZ302 came out, because the DZ302 and the Boss 302 were kind of when everybody realized you could slap massive heads on small engines. But yeah, so they haven't even figured that out.
I think that the Boss 302 I think was 69, or was it 70? 69.
Well, I think 69. I think it was the 69 season of Trans Am.
Right.
So I'm not 100% sure when that all made it into.
It was probably available to the public in 70.
Yeah. So they were just learning that you could slap massive heads on little engines and make power, even though it was a different kind of power, the power curve.
Yeah.
Okay, back to the article. Non-air conditioned cars were fitted with the newly developed W45 version of the 455 with a W31 camshaft. Cylinder heads were the decasting units from the W30 engine. The lump was crowned with a standard cast iron intake manifold and a 750 CFM Rochester quadrajet carb. The AC equipped cars were given the W46 version of the 455. Significant differences included a milder cam, C-casting cylinder heads, and a 735 CFM Rochester quadrajet carburetor. Both motors were given the W30 induction system and shared the same hydraulic lifters and dual exhausts. Output on each was a healthy 390 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque.
Yeah.
Good Lord. That's quite a jump.
That's impressive.
Jeez.
It really is. You know, if the hottest engine of the era arguably was a 426 Hemi, the 426 Hemi might have had that motor on horsepower, but in terms of torque, which as we all know is what really matters for your launch, it was right there with a 426 Hemi and a 440 six-pack as well.
We see an increase. We're almost at the 400 mark, but we see an increase, and this was just what was purported, because it wasn't.
Yeah, that's the other thing that most automakers in those days, as a lot of you gearheads know, would actually underrate their horsepower for advertisements, because it enabled people to get cheaper car insurance. Because once you crossed over certain thresholds, your premiums went up. So, for example, Chrysler in particular always purported that the 426 Hemi put out 425 horsepower. If you dyno any survivor Hemi engine car from that era that's, you know, in good shape and, you know, may or may not have been rebuilt, they'll be putting out close to 500 horsepower. Stock.
Well, that's also the NHRA thing, like stock eliminator and stuff. I mean, if you look now, they say that the Copos make like 420 horsepower. Like you can do you can do the slide rule, and you know the thing's making 1,200 horsepower.
Yeah, you don't need GPS to figure out that they're doing.
I think maybe they were taking that, win on Sunday, sell on Monday thing.
Yeah,
a little bit further to be, well, look, it's, we told the NHRA this thing had 425 horsepower. We got to tell everybody else that too.
Sure.
And they weren't racing. I was going to say, maybe it was to kind of sandbag their program, but they weren't even racing at this time. So maybe not. Okay. Back to the specs. All cars were fitted with the turbo hydromatic 3-speed automatic, shifted via the famed Hurst dual gate his and hers console mounted system, which enabled one to manually shift gears without fear of accidentally going into neutral or reverse. So I don't want to gloss over that because like the Hurst, it's half the name, the Hurst Olds. So, the Hurst was like, and still is, a huge shifter manufacturer. And so, but this one wasn't. So the one that you're describing here, that the his and hers, is it like the horseshoe one?
No, it's.
Why do they call it the his and hers?
That's something, I didn't find the answer for. That was like kind of a colloquial nickname. Really, it was called the Hurst dual gate. And so on the left-hand side, closest to the driver, you had the standard park reverse neutral 3-2-1.
Okay, there we go. I see the photo.
There was a way to slap out to your right towards the passenger where you had 3-2-1 there on the right side, but no neutral and no reverse. So it basically just locked out everything but 3, 2, and 1, so you could shift it manually.
Yeah, so it was
fine.
Yeah, it's basically like an early Tiptronic transmission, almost like.
Yeah, basically, yeah, you could call it that, and maybe it got the name his and hers because the second gate was closer to the passenger seat where.
Yeah, you could have your sweetheart shift for you.
You have your sweetheart shift in the car.
That's a level.
That's pretty cool.
I don't know that I have.
But that's really the biggest contribution Hurst made to this car, and I'm glad you didn't gloss over it. Because it may sound corny now in an era of Tiptronics and things like that, but back in those days, for guys who were drag racing, that was a very common thing, that if you're slapping a shifter, an automatic shifter, if you go through neutral, you're in big effing trouble, because if you're going down a quarter mile at 80 miles an hour and you slip into reverse on a non-synchroed gearbox, you can say goodbye to your tranny and your engine in one fell.
Yeah, we've had a conversation with our buddy Jeff Smith, and he can attest to that. With his poor Chevelle. But yeah, that's pretty cool. Like 1, 2, 3. It's like an early slap shifter. And dude, Hurst is so cool that they've been around for this long. While they're owned by Holley now, they're just like that heritage, right? They're one of those heritage brands that just like, I would buy their products just because of the name, right? Like a shirt or whatever. I happen to have one in my 5th gen Camaro. They still make a fantastic product. So free plug for Hurst.
There you go.
All right, moving on. Oldsmobile's 10-bolt G88 anti-spin differential was standard and featured a 391 to 1 gear on non-AC cars and a 308 to 1 on the frosty ones. This made me raise my eyebrow. So why the difference between why the difference in gear for AC and non-AC car?
Unaccounted for. That's not my department.
I can wager that AC car or non-AC cars were performance models because they didn't have air conditioning.
Oh, so they were basically just, there was no reason other than if you wanted to go drag racing and have a hot rear end in the car, you probably didn't order air conditioning because it's heavy.
Yeah.
And it's a power.
As we're running these numbers, so 391,
right?
With it had a turbo 350 in it?
Yeah. The engine was the 455, and then you had the turbo hydromatic. Yeah.
So it would have been
so 350, 400, something, one of those.
Yeah, it could have been a 400 or a 350.
So, oh my God. Can you imagine driving the highway in that?
With 391s, yeah, you'd be wrapping that thing out.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, but then again, at that time, what was the speed limit on a highway?
55?
70, I think. 75,
Really?
maybe. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh.
God, you need earplugs.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Oof.
Oh, and your mileage. I mean,
Yeah.
in third gear, you're probably pulling what, 4,000 RPMs,
Yeah.
4,500 RPMs, just cruising. I mean, that's kind of crazy.
I love too how the different brands have a different nomenclature for stuff, right? Like anti-spin differential instead of posi-track.
Right. In fact, in my last article, there was that horrendous mistake. I don't know how it happened. My last rare rides. What was I focusing on? Where someone pointed out.
Yeah, someone got all bent out of shape, as they do.
Well, and they had every right to, because it was just a brain fart. I was talking about a Chrysler.
Oh, you called it. Yeah, you called it a turbo hydromatic, but it was actually a torque flight.
A torque flight, yeah. And it was just 4 o'clock.
You get in those guys.
Yeah.
They don't handle mistakes well. They're missing that part of their like.
How dare you say my car has a GM transmission?
I deserve to be crucified for that, but my only excuse was it was about 4:30 in the morning when I wrote that that paragraph. And believe me, I know my hydromatics from my torque flights, but so that was funny. Some guy, the article got posted like that, and some guy in the comments was like, I should have caught that. I
don't know what I was thinking. I'm sorry, because I'm the first line of defense. I should have caught that.
You're fine.
Well, if it's any consolation, like you wrote it at 4 and I was editing it like 3. So
plus you rely on my stuff generally being right. So.
No, your stuff is very clean.
It was my fault, definitely down the line. But
we all have those. I'm not, except I'm smart enough not to like admit to them like publicly.
I'm not wrong. You're wrong. And then just change it. Right?
He's the only genius amongst us. Sure. I'm dumb enough to admit my mistake. Yeah.
Well. No, that's why Greg is here. That way I don't put my foot in my mouth or say something wrong. He can correct me.
Right.
But all right, back to the specs. All right. The suspension was stock 442, save for the modifications that allowed for a beefy anti-roll bar. Got a handle. For stopping, the Hurst Olds came with 11-inch 4-piston power disc brakes up front and 9.5 by 2-inch drums in the rear. Super stock 2 wheels clad with Goodyear white walls were standard on all 68 Hurst Olds. Every Hurst Olds came equipped with silver and chrome 14 by 6-inch super stock 2 wheels clad with Goodyear G70 14 polyglass white walls. Inside the all-black interior were vinyl strato bucket seats, a wood grain 3-spoke steering wheel, and the Rocket Rally Pack cluster with a tachometer. I love the names they give these
There's
things.
Another, Chrysler would call it the tick-tock clock and the tick-tock tack and the, and here you got the Rocket Pack. And
it's great. Let's see. Okay. A lone bespoke paint scheme was offered consisting of Peruvian silver with twin black hood stripes, side stripes, and a solid black deck lid. Special Hurst Olds badges were located on the front fenders and trunk. Public demand for the $3,150 Hurst Olds far exceeded expectations, and Oldsmobile immediately planned changes for the 1969 version of the car. For starters, the 455's block was fitted with a hydraulic lifter camshaft, a nodular iron crankshaft, and slightly dished pistons, which were again capped with D-code cylinder heads and new chromed rocker covers. A distributor that enhanced to low-end response was fitted, as was a unique cast iron intake and revised cast iron exhaust manifolds. The biggest change was a completely redesigned ram air induction system with a vacuum-operated flapper door that was fed by massive twin hood snorkels in lieu of the previous under-bumper design. Okay. Actually, no, I want to read this next part too. Interestingly, though, actual output was virtually identical to the 68. Olds chose to publicly underrate it at 380 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque, perhaps for insurance purposes. In any case, the performance was not harmed, as the 3,855-pound 1969 Hurst Olds could motivate to 60 miles per hour in just 5.9 seconds and trip the quarter in 13.9 seconds at 101 mile an hour. That is
a serious car.
That's more than respectable, man.
Yeah,
That's
that
wild.
was a serious car for 1969. There's no other way to put
That's
it.
a serious car for now, dude.
Sure.
Well, maybe not now, but 15 years ago, that's a serious car.
Yeah. They really did it up. I think the idea was, if we're going to do this, we're going around the 400 cubic inch edict ban. We're going to do this right. And they did. And, God bless them for it. So
now you mentioned in there that they came in, whatever color you wanted, as long as it was Peruvian silver.
that was the 68. Yeah.
Okay. Because when I think of Hurst, it's gold.
Yep.
When did that happen? Because
That
that blue, I actually, like, if you were watching my screen, I stopped and I was like, wait a minute, is that what they called that gold color?
No, if Vinny had read the very next paragraph, I think we would have gotten into that. The iconic.
Well, I wanted to stop because we talked about the 455's new block, or excuse me, the block that was fitted with different components, Greg. But we didn't see a whole lot of gain as far as their reported output, right? So let's see. They changed they changed to a hydraulic lifter camshaft, nodular iron crankshaft, slightly dished pistons, like you mentioned, which were capped with the D code cylinder heads. I'm curious what the CC on those were compared to the C code cylinder heads that they previously used.
But
and a
the distributor and the breathing,
exactly. Yeah. That vacuum operated flapper system that opened those snorkels, and the distributor that enhanced low end response. Greg, why do you think, okay, so they picked up a lot of time on the track and 0 to 60, but not much more power.
Because they lied about the power.
I mean,
okay. There's no, you don't get faster without shaving a ton of weight. A second back then is huge. No, they lied about the power. It's that simple.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
I mean, if you think about it, the induction system alone has got to be worth 15 horsepower, right? Instead of having the 68 Hurst Olds had 2 scoops under the front bumper. Right. And now you had when you guys read the article and you look at the pictures, this thing had mailbox sized hood scoops that would, that put anything else at that time to shame. Probably anything else since then to shame. You got to be picking up at least 15 ponies just there alone. So
no, that's a great point.
Greg, I mean, they just lied their asses off about
It's got to be that. I mean, you look at the 442, like the regular 442, and they're just like these slits at the end of the hood. Those intakes on this thing. When they say, when he says mailbox size, you guys go check out the article right now. They're massive.
Yeah.
Really cool looking too, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay. So in addition to the hood snorkels, the new car was also fitted with a large deck lid mounted airfoil, new mirrors, and unique Superstock 2 15x7 chrome wheels with Goodyear F60x15 polyglass tires. The silver and black paint combination of the previous year was dropped for the now iconic scheme of cameo white and fire frost gold accents, consisting of hood, side, rocker panel, and deck lid stripes. There you go, Greg. Okay. Matching gold HO55 callouts graced the hood scoops, and the grille was blacked out for a more aggressive look. Inside, a different wood veneer was fitted, and painted gold stripes enhanced the headrests. Demand for the new car was again strong, and this time Olds moved just over 900 units at a base price of $4,180. Tantalizingly, 3 of those cars were actually convertibles. Okay. Let's see. There was never.
Got to go to the Google and see what $4,000 in 1969 really was.
Yeah. Let us know, Greg.
Wasn't cheap, I can tell you that, because the Mercedes Benz ran about $6,000 in those days. So.
Okay. The next section, we get into like the kind of the lore of what's going on with those cars. And it's a pretty interesting story. I like it.
They were only 28 grand.
Really? Huh.
28 grand. 1969, $4,000 was 28,510.
Wow.
Dude.
These things cost less than my EcoBoost Mustang.
Wow.
Jeez.
Well,
that's a hell of a value.
Yeah, it is.
To show you that car prices have far exceeded the rate of inflation. Seriously.
It's true.
I remember being a kid watching The Price is Right, and they'd give away, a Trans Am, and they'd say, it was part of the showcase showdown, and they'd say, and this car, has a retail value of $3,800, and it was like a 5.7 liter loaded Trans Am with T-tops, and it's like you do the money factor, in 1978 or 79, whenever that was, and that's less than your EcoBoost Mustang as well.
Dude, what can you buy for? What did you say? 24,000?
28,510.
What can you buy for 28 right now? A base model GT, maybe. No. You're looking at 35.
I mean, if you found like a 2018 still on the lot. I actually did, but it was like 32.
So you can get an EcoBoost.
You could get a Pentastar Challenger, a V6 Challenger with the GT model, which has 4-wheel drive, for about that money.
Yeah,
it's a respectable car. It's got 300 horsepower in it, and it's not a muscle car, but it gives you looks of a muscle car. You
get a V6 Camaro. You'd have to get an import, an import sports
maybe
car.
Get a new Bronco Sport.
Yeah,
I like those Broncos, boys. Those new Broncos. I know
the full size, the Sport.
No. Forget the Sport, man. That looks like an Explorer to me. They really did a nice job on the new full Bronco.
Yeah, they did.
I know we're all supposed to be muscle car guys here, but
I like off-road stuff.
If they put a Coyote in that thing, man,
I know you're a Jeep guy. I am not. I don't. Jeeps are not my thing. I respect
we know
them.
from last week.
Yeah. They're not my thing. They're cool. They're off-road capable. I mean, they've been proven. No one can take that from them. To me, they're just slow. Except for that new one with the 392. So
there's that, and the Grand Cherokee is my daily driver as a Grand Cherokee.
Oh, the V6, yeah, or the inline six. Excuse me.
I've got a 5.7 Hemi in mine, and that thing's not slow. Yeah.
Wait, a Gen 3?
Well, it's not the brand new one that's just coming out, the 2021s. Mine's a 2017, and you could have it with the 5.7 Hemi in the oval.
Really?
Yeah, the two top trim lines you could have.
Well, I eat my words then. All right.
So I love that thing. It's spacious. It's got every bell and whistle in the world, and it's 375 horsepower Hemi in it. It motivates. Sure. Yeah.
So the Trackhawk, they make some awesome vehicles, but I'm just not a Jeep person. I like Blazers and Broncos and stuff.
But that new Bronco is pretty cool.
What are we talking about, you guys? Come on. What's going on over here?
All right, come on. We're talking. We segued from a 400 horsepower muscle car in 1969 to a Bronco. That's just not right.
We need to give this Hurst Olds its due.
All right.
Okay. So back to the article. There was never any intention on the part of Oldsmobile or Hurst to produce a ragtop version. But at some point in the development of the 69 car, George Hurst decided that such a car could have considerable promotional value. Initially, 2 convertibles were built, one for East Coast appearances and one for events out west. The cars started life as stock 442 drop tops that were sent to Demmer and subjected to the standard Hurst modifications. Aside from the convertible top, which also featured a gold stripe, chrome and gold colored superstock 2 wheels, and a large Hurst logo on the doors, the cars were otherwise identical to the hardtop HOs. The East Coast car made a memorable appearance at the 1969 Daytona 500, doing several slow circuits during breaks in the racing action. with George behind the wheel, Linda, Miss Hurst Golden Shifter Vaughn, waved to the fans while sharing a platform on the trunk with a 9-foot tall Hurst Shifter replica. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you market.
That's correct. And that car, well, we'll keep going in the article, but the West Coast car, which had the same platform with a 9-foot tall Hurst Shifter, was recently restored, I think, in the past 5 years.
Really?
And was given a ground up concours restoration, but the shifter, the 9-foot shifter, was missing and was never found. So the guys who restored the car, and there's a video on YouTube which I watched, which is fascinating. If you all want to check it out, just search on YouTube for the Hurst Olds Convertible, and you'll see the '69 Hurst Olds Convertible, and you'll see the restoration video. They built a replica of that shifter just from photographs, and they were able to get certain measurements off the car.
Off of Linda Vaughn, right?
Well, the screw.
Oh, I mean the car, yeah.
Yeah, off the car, the screw-in points. Was that a slip, a Freudian slip or something? Linda Vaughn's measurements had nothing to do with it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Where the platform screwed in to the trunk of the car, they could measure, those holes to the brackets on the bumper where it clipped into. And based on that, they were able to figure out it was a 9-foot,
Dude, how cool is that? That's awesome.
Badass. So they recreated that thing, and the car was shown. I think it's in a museum now somewhere, even though it's owned by a private collector. It's on display in a museum with their recreated 9-foot shifter on the back. So,
dude, that's so cool.
One, though, sadly. But
well,
she passed, didn't she? I think she passed a few years ago.
Greg, can we fact check that? No, but I mean, to my point earlier, dude, that's how you market, right? But automakers don't do stuff like that anymore. I guess maybe they do, but
back in the day, man, you had Goodyear blimps. I mean, you still have Goodyear blimps, but that was big deal when the Goodyear blimp was over the Super Bowl in those days, and it had an LED screen where advertisements were playing on the side of the blimp. And
okay, so I think it's true. I think my statement is true, but it's also kind of not true, because Dodge, again, fantastic marketing. They built that Dodge sleigh, that Challenger sleigh, which is really cool, Santa's sleigh.
I saw it at the LA Auto Show and covered it the year that they released. I think it was 2018, maybe 2017.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, one of my coverages of the LA Auto Show for Street Muscle featured it, and I
I remember.
It was pretty badass. Yeah.
Well, so anyways,
Linda's alive and well.
Oh, thank goodness. See, yes. I hate to spread rumors of her early demise. So
well, we got Greg.
That's why I have Google.
Google is your friend.
So let's see. Aside from the top wheels and Hurst logos on the doors, the convertibles were identical to the coupes. I'm sorry, I'm reading a photo caption here. So we left off where we're talking about the
9-foot shifter,
the East Coast car.
Correct.
Okay, so the East Coast car, that car was destroyed under unknown circumstances later that year. So a third convertible was produced to replace it. The two cars still exist today and are both in private collections. The 1969 Hurst Olds Convertible was truly Oldsmobile's apex predator. Never again would one of the company's cars offer more power or performance. And as for exclusivity, the 1969 Hurst Olds Convertibles are the brand's ultimate rare rides. Well done, sir. Well done.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Fun article to write. Really fun article. Fun car. Enjoyed it a lot.
Greg, excuse me, Rob. I really every time I read your rare rides or any of your articles, but mainly rare rides. I know why the audience loves them so much, man. They're you're the fact that you're having fun writing them comes across. Just the way you put it all together and string your stream of consciousness on the page. It reads really well, man. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you very much. As I said, I really enjoyed it. It's a unique car. You know, what better subject for rare rides is a car where there are only 3 ever made and 2 in existence. I mean, that's right up there with, you know, the rarest 427 Racing Block Corvettes, and you know, it's even more rare than like Hemi Cuda convertibles, or, you know, I think the only other car, let's see, a couple of months ago, I did the for the original Shelby GT 500 Super Snake, of which there was only 1. Now, there's a number of other cars out there, many of which that I'm probably going to get to in time.
I have one in mind for next month. You might want to save it for another one. I'm sure you have a whole catalog that you want to do, but I might have one that you can add to your list.
I will talk.
For sure. I don't want to give it away.
Yeah.
Greg, as we read through that article, did anything about the performance of the car like surprise you for like the time?
No, it's pretty, I mean, 1490s.
No, that was the 68 model, right? And then 69 was 13.9, wasn't it?
Oh, did
Yeah,
it go 13?
the 13s, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, back then that you were king of the street with that. I mean,
Yep.
Yeah, you're cooking, man. We
just
talked
like, you know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if you had a legitimate 10-second street car, you owned the street.
for sure.
Really?
Well, we were talking to Eric Radzin's over at Pro Charger and the other day, and we were talking about the new Edge Mustang, you know, from like 98 to 2004. And you guys were saying like, oh, what was its quarter mile, you know, factory? And I said, well, the base model GT was 14 seconds, and both of you guys started laughing and were like, no way. But when you talk about this car running, you know, 1390s or whatever it runs, that's not shocking. That's like, oh, maybe they underreported it.
Well, because it's a muscle car. I mean, the thing, you know, big engine. I mean, okay, the weight was probably a big difference, but I mean, you're also talking like the Mustang. It's a 281 cubic inch engine.
Yeah, that's a good
Like,
point.
1490s for a Mustang. That's cool.
I feel like you're like you're
exasperated.
You're defending the Mustang. You're like, come on, man, it's doing its best. Like, what do you want?
I think it can. I mean,
a 99 Mustang, that is not exactly the pinnacle of Ford performance.
Right. They had a Cobra model at that time, right?
Yeah.
So they had a Cobra model, but the Terminator didn't come until 03, 04, the real Cobra.
Right.
I'm not going to go so far as to not call the previous Cobras real Cobras.
So 98 and prior were real Cobras. 99, 2000, 2001. Those were like kind of.
There was no 2000 Cobra. There was a 2000 Cobra R. But there was no 2000 Cobra because it for that generation's a 9901.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. 99 and 01.
Any way you cut it, though, doing sub 14 quarters in 1969.
You're cooking.
Because, like Greg said, I mean, there were only a handful of cars that could run like that. You had like 427 Corvettes. You had Shelby Cobras. 427 Cobras could probably do that. You had Hemi Cudas, but as far as stock cars were concerned, that was, the pinnacle of muscle car technology, And
okay, save for Buick, because I don't want to go there, but the rest of GM stable, is there anybody that comes to mind or any model that comes to mind that could compete with this thing?
Yes.
69.
Yes. And interestingly, we kind of glossed over it as we read the article, but at the same time, Oldsmobile was doing all the chicanery to get around the 400 cubic inch ban. Many of you out there know that Chevrolet was doing the same thing in a different way. And in 1969 came out with the Camaro ZL1. And yeah, that car, was a beast. And
okay, but that's arguably like a pony car, smaller at the time, right? It was a lot smaller, lighter.
There are people that would argue that's a muscle car, though. But
for sure, I'm one of them. But
yeah,
Okay, so mid-size at GM. You're talking about GTO, right? Could the GTO hang with this thing?
No.
Okay. The Buick, I know that they could. The GSX Stage 1 definitely could.
Which I did a rare rides on last year, I think. Yeah.
Love that car.
Yeah.
Let's see. Any of the other? Oh, the Chevelle, the LS6, the 454.
Yeah, but that was later. That was 1970. That was
That's
a year
true.
later. Yep.
That's true.
Not 69.
All right, 69. Looks like it's king of the heap.
Yeah, that was basically it. Now you have to remember that within a model year, you had both Challengers and Cudas and Chargers.
And you had the Barracuda, the Superstock, and the Dart.
Yep.
I don't know if you guys want to count those, but
Well, the Superstock, that 1 year only Barracuda before they went to the e-body platform was, I mean, they made so few of them. It qualifies as a rare ride, but I think most people would argue that's not like a full production vehicle.
Yeah, I'd be one
Just
of them.
like the Hurst Olds, really, the Hurst Olds is a production vehicle. They made close to 1,000 of them.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like they made enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's only the convertible that was super, super rare, because George Hurst, wanted two convertibles. So
when you guys think about cars like that today, do you which ones spring to mind, right? Like that are super rare. The Demon is probably going to be one of them
today.
No.
No. How many did they make?
The Demon
they don't make anymore.
No, it was 1 year only. I think they made like. Don't quote me on this. Some Mopar.
They only made like 50.
Freaked out on me. No, they made a lot more than that. I think it was in the 700s.
Okay, so that's eventually going to be a rare ride, or it already is.
I'm sorry, I don't see the modern Demon as.
Well, that's what I'm. Okay, so then what modern car is a rare ride?
How many of the Copo Camaros did they make? The new ones?
I think that weren't they doing like Ford with a 50 a year? But they did it for 6 years
under the same spec.
I mean, they're all various, but I mean, they're a Copo. So, I mean,
maybe that
300. I mean, probably
it's different eras, to truly do like a low volume car these days is almost impossible because of the
you're going to lose your ass on the.
Well, the tooling alone and, to change, to create a new assembly line just for those cars and stuff like that, it's really impractical. I think the closest you're really going to get is like a Demon. Now they, Dodge.
You think we'll see anything with that Elephant?
If it's going to happen, it's going to happen soon because Dodge,
They just announced, not announced, but
with this merger with Peugeot and all the Fiat companies merging with Peugeot, I've been reading some of the statements of the new CEO of what's called Stellantis, which might be the worst name for an auto company in the history.
What did Greg? What did Brian Haven say that it sounded like?
He said, "Isn't that something you take for your thyroid?"
Yeah,
and somebody else said. Not for your thyroid.
That was me.
Oh yeah,
for your thyroid.
Or treatment for venereal disease or something.
Oh god.
I got to put my Stellantis on, to be honest with you, that CEO's first move was to disband all the engineers
the
at
SRT
and scatter.
But I also heard today that disbanding SRT, but also breaking them into new performance divisions.
Yeah. So it's unclear what's going to happen. Plus with, Biden in office, they're going to push ahead with, increased EPA standards, which means an automaker is going to have to average out the gas mileage of the efficiency of all their cars. And it has to make the federal level.
Well, that's always been what they've said, so maintaining CAFE standards has always been like the detriment to Dodge, right? Or excuse me, Jeep.
I don't see how Dodge is going to continue to just put out 700-800 horsepower muscle cars and rely on that as the core of their brand. They're going to have to do something with electricity.
But they're the only ones who aren't, well, that we know of.
But you know, if they
I honestly love them for that.
We all do, but if they really wanted to do a proper send-off before they started to electrify or hybridize Challengers and Chargers, I would cram a Elephant into something and just do
and charge next to nothing for it.
And next to nothing for it.
$26,000 Elephant.
Right? There you go. Make it cheaper than your EcoBoost. Yeah.
You guys are thinking small. You guys are thinking small. Everybody, look, Dodge. If anybody over there is watching, Mark Trussell, bring back the Viper and stuff a Elephant in there somehow. I don't know. Make it happen.
Or do a Super Demon Challenger, you know, and stuff 1,000 horsepower into that, but do it quick.
Dude, did you see Kevin Hart's new ride from Speedcore?
I did. Isn't that one of the cars I covered with Sean Smith?
No, they hadn't built it yet. It's a brand new build from Speedcore.
It's based on a 68 Charger.
70.
Okay.
It's a 70 Charger, all carbon body, just like Speedcore is known for. Elephant under the hood. Everybody out there who's like criticized Kevin Hart will be happy to know, or Speedcore, that they really stepped up the safety, harnesses, cage.
Let's just say we all hope that Kevin learned his lesson.
I have it on good authority that he has. He's got behind the wheel at a course. He wasn't
driving during all that, right?
No, he wasn't. He still got
but that car got destroyed less than a mile from my house, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, it was right on Mulholland Highway, right down the hill from me on the valley side of Malibu. And
you know, what I saw, a lot of people were criticizing him and were criticizing Speedcore for that, right? And it's like, look, okay, I get that you're average people, you don't know what you're talking about in terms of like safety and classic cars and just like the whole situation in general, right? But if you're going to criticize them, at least give credit now to him reaching back out to the same company, them going above and beyond with the safety of this new car, and him stepping up to say, hey, look, I'm not a professional driver, but I'm going to go out of my way and take some driving courses and learn how to be a better driver.
Hey, look, you know, anybody who's in love with speed knows that in addition to enjoying it, you have to respect it. And it's not, you know, it's not something that you can just, you know, be ignorant of. You have to respect speed. Drivers far better than the three of us sitting here on this little chat have died behind the wheel of fast cars. And you know, it's like I see kids around LA, you know, that obviously come from well-to-do families, and like an 18-year-old's driving a 911 Turbo in Beverly Hills or a Ferrari, and I just think to myself, how long is that car for this planet? You know, how long is that kid gonna be? You don't do that. You know, my first car, when I was like 17 years old, my parents got me my grandfather's Mustang convertible LX with the worst engine that ever appeared in a Mustang. It was an 87 with a 4-cylinder that made a grand total of like 96 horsepower.
Hey,
and it was
they may not have made power, but those things will last forever. You can put water in them, you can put sand in them.
True, but you know, it was a good call on my parents' part, because they gave me a car that looked the part. You know, it was a sporty looking car, and I had the only convertible in New York City probably. But at the same time, they didn't hand a 5-liter V8 over to me, and thank God they didn't, because I probably wouldn't be talking to you right now.
I think you'd be fine, because the 88 5-liter was not exactly a power.
but
I get your point, though.
130 horsepower in that car was sufficient to get your.
Yeah, but you know what? Like you're talking about your parents, right? And a lot of people's parents or those kids with their well-to-do families. But it's not even like you can just go finance one now, like a high horsepower muscle car. Like if you can get approved for 25 grand, you can go get something fast.
I mean, if you can get approved for 35 grand, you can have 460 horsepower with the new Mustang. I mean,
insane.
Why do you think Mustang has such a reputation for, running over people in crowds? I mean, seriously, it's because people who have no driving skill but can afford $36,000.
Yep, they have the keys in their pocket. Yeah, it's absolutely true. You
Another
can get a Scat Pack Challenger or Charger for that kind of money too, and have a 392 under the hood, and maybe a little bit more than $36,000 or $38,000, but you can get a whole heaps of trouble in 5-liter Mustangs and Scat Packs. And
to Dodge's credit, though, if you buy an SRT product from them, you can go to take a one-day driving course, which is pretty cool.
Which I did once, and I did it in torrential rain at where was it? At Pomona, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this was 2011, and they held it locally. Very cool. Moved around the country, and it was at I think it was at Pomona, or maybe it was Fontana. I can't remember, but it was torrentially raining, and I spent the whole time just purposely like fishing all the parts because it wasn't mine, So they gave me a 392 Challenger, a Charger, and the Jeep. The first year of the Jeep SRT in the the WK2 body style, and I mean, and the Chrysler 300 as well with a
back up, Rob. You said the WK2 body style. What's that?
That's the current Grand Cherokee body style before it went away for 2021. The
Jeep guys are like Honda guys. They like to refer to their chassis codes.
Their chassis code.
I mean, if you started talking about, a Mazda, like an FD or something, I would know. I'm just not familiar with that.
Yeah, or like a Challenger is an LC platform.
Right.
Yeah, or LA based on LC.
Which ones are the LX? Is that the Charger?
LX is the 300 and the original Charger.
And the Magnum, your favorite.
And the Magnum.
Who did they make that for? Why?
Hey, if I had to have one, I don't think they look bad. I think
if I had to have one, I'd chop it off and make a truck.
I would not be opposed to that. Hey, Street Muscle, new project.
Yeah.
Listen,
Project Handyman.
At Springfest, there's always a good 20 or 30 of them at Springfest. So someone loves them and cares for them. And hey, not my cup of tea either. But that was Ralph Gilles. He just said, "Why not?" And I love Ralph Gilles. So
did you see that? Like, it might be a rendering or it might be an actual custom that someone made, but a modern Charger like grafted onto a Magnum body.
Yes, I did see that with it. What was color was that? Body. It was blue. I saw it today.
No, I saw a green one.
Oh, really?
What's that green
you're
color?
Talking about a real car, or are you talking about just a
That's what I'm. I think it might be a real car, but it's hard to tell nowadays.
Today on Facebook, I saw someone do a Magnum version of a Charger wide body red eye, and I think it was just an artist's representation of what the car could be like, and it was blue.
Now I'm curious, what is that metallic kind of like olive green color?
It's called F8 green.
That's a retro color.
That is a retro color. You could get a 70 Challenger in that color. 70
Very nice
as well. Yeah. Buddy of mine who I think I was working for you. Maybe I was working for Nicole at the time, but I had met a guy. The first red eye Challenger I had seen was at Springfest. And it was an F8 green. A buddy of mine, Tom Ladeau, down in Texas, had driven it all the way from Houston, Texas to Orange County to Pomona for Springfest. And on the first day before the show on Friday, where guys, are detailing their cars or doing whatever, he was in the parking lot at the Marriott Hotel. And I had never seen a red eye before. It was brand new, it just hit the market. And he was one of the first people in America to receive his red eye. And it's F8 green with a caramel interior. And I did a write-up on the car for Street Muscle.
Nice.
It was.
Or
maybe it was Performance magazine.
Could have
I
been.
think it was
Well,
Power and Performance before.
that's one of those colors that like is so bold. It can only work on certain cars, and that's one of those cars.
Dodge just got some great colors right now. They really do. You know, the heritage colors like Go Mango, which I think is an even better color than the original Hemi Orange that it's based on. It's a bolder color. They've got Plum Crazy. They've got, you know, all
Rum Raisin.
Yeah, they've got all these great vintage colors.
No, B5. B5 is the color, man.
B5 blue, baby.
That's the color, at least for me. That's
I remember looking up Auto Trader ads with you, and you kept it has to be B5.
Yeah.
And we see how well that turned out. That cut down everything.
If I was in the market right now for a Challenger or a Charger, like a wide body Hellcat, I'd probably go Mango. I love that orange. It just pops, and with like black stripes, black wheels. It's a really killer looking car. And you know what makes me sad? So let's talk about Ford for 1 second. I build cars all over the internet all the time, because I'm sure all three of us do. I go to Ford.com. I've built a Bronco recently. I keep going back to the Mustang. And I build various cars. I build like a premium GT. I build a GT 350. I've built GT 500s. I built Bullets.
the super muscle car.
Twister Orange. I'm sorry, Twister Orange sucks. I hate that color. It's washed out. It's just compare that color to Dodge's Go Mango. And
I'm looking at you, Vinny. I'm looking at you.
I like it.
Putting up
I
my
like
hand.
it.
And holding drop is proof.
Okay, so the car I drove when I went to Sonoma was it wasn't the darker silver, Greg. It was the lighter silver. Which one's that one called? Iconic silver or something?
That's the color of my car. Yeah.
So iconic silver with black stripes. Probably my favorite combination on that car. Second favorite is the lighter blue, the really bright, like vibrant metallic blue.
Ford Performance Blue, I think it's called.
There's like three different blues.
This year in 2021, there's Performance and there's Velocity.
And there's Kona also.
Yeah, there's also Kona.
Kona, they darkened Kona up. I swear Kona didn't used to be that dark.
Really?
But I maybe I'm crazy, but Kona's a lot darker than I remember it being.
So the car you liked was either Velocity or Performance Blue.
Yeah. So that one, and then probably Wimbledon White and Guardsman Blue, the special edition, the Heritage edition. My point is that the orange is nowhere near the top of my list, but I like it.
Really?
Greg's giving me a hard time. I still like it.
I'm giving you a hard time because when I was looking at that orange car that was a smoking deal, and I could not stand that orange. It wasn't the Twister orange. It was the orange Crush. No. Yeah. It was the even lighter orange. It was almost like school bus yellow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was more like a yellow. And I liked it.
I couldn't, I mean, it was a smoking deal. And thankfully, knock on wood, I'm so grateful that I was so hesitant because they ended up selling it like 11 hours before I went in to buy it.
Oh, really?
I'd been sitting there. I was ready to buy it and they sold it and they ended up pushing me into a 2020 and it was the best thing in the world to happen.
Yeah.
But I couldn't stomach the color.
I liked it. I liked it. You know which color I didn't like that I thought I would really like on the GT500 were both the reds, right? So like the dark metallic red, don't care for it, and the bright red.
Yeah, really race red and what are they calling it now? Ruby red. It's had that the darker one has had several names. It's the same color.
Yeah. I don't care for either one of those.
I've never been a fan. Dodge offers a dark red metallic as well that I don't care for. It's just not my.
I do like the red on the Camaro though. I really like the red.
Love the red on the Camaro.
ZL1, a red ZL1.
Yeah, buddy of mine. Sean Davis has one, Vinny.
No shit.
Yeah, Sean Davis has a ZL1, 2018 or 19 ZL1 in that race red. I think it's called.
Oh. Once my Camaro supercharged, I'm gonna have to go pay.
You got to go over to his garage with me one day, dude.
Dude,
Right.
let me know. We'll go. I would love to.
As soon as this bullshit is over and we got vaccines and whatnot, we're going over there, because like the collection of cars he's gotten there at any given time is like ludicrous. Plus his own cars, you know, he has.
He's storing cars for Ludacris?
Well, no,
I know.
he is, as a matter of fact, and he has in the past, but I was using ludicrous as an adjective at that moment. But yeah, he actually has stored cars for Ludacris amongst, I'm actually not supposed to say that. So I don't know.
I can beep it out.
Yeah,
Like,
please do.
on the time, I'm gonna beep that stuff out.
Yeah.
No, it's all good.
One of
Sean's
these
pretty
days,
laid back.
I'll take you over to his place. It's a lot of fun. He's got pool tables and
I'd love it.
refrigerators and flat screens, and he's got like signed overalls from like Kimi Räikkönen on the walls. And
I'll never leave, dude.
Pretty badass. Yeah.
But yeah, man. He's got a ZL1. That's cool. Once
Look on his YouTube channel, and when he first got it, he did a cross-country run from, I think they were in Vegas, and I don't remember the highway they took to LA, but they didn't, you know, they purposely avoided the 15 and the 10 and took some backwoods roads.
interesting.
And he was hammering that thing in one section. I remember one section of the video, they were going through switchbacks up in the mountains somewhere. And, you know, he was giving it the beans for sure.
That's what I was going to say. So he posted, he's constantly posting videos, which I really love. And I subscribe to his channel. If you guys aren't following Autotopia LA, go over to their channel and subscribe right now, because fantastic content. But the last video that he posted was of like this old Dodge truck that was like converted to be a pre-runner, which is totally cool. But in the background of that video, he has this 69 Mustang that's like this pea green color that I did a feature on. The guy's name is his company's like Mancini on Instagram, and I'll link it in the description below. But a super nice guy. He's a video game designer, and he built that thing in his home garage. Do you know which car I'm talking about, Rob?
I know the color you're talking about, because I knew a guy who had a Shelby GT 500 years ago. It was either a 500 or a 350, like a 68. And I know the color you're talking about. I don't think I've seen the actual car. Is it a Shelby or just a straight?
No, it wasn't anything special. It was just a fastback, but he converted it to be like, it's wide body now. It's got massive flares on it. It's like slammed. It's totally custom, but he basically wanted to build like a Trans Am era pro touring car. And so that's why he chose that like pea green color, I guess, because he saw some old racing footage.
No, it's a really cool car. The guy I should say, a 71 Mercedes 280 SL that I bought like 25 years ago. And I restored it. A guy down in Orange County named Bruce Strauss, who at the time was like the big Mercedes restoration guy in Orange County, did a ground up on it for me. And he used to buy and sell cars. He was constantly moving cars. He had like 300 Mercedes 300 limousines or 600 limousines, whatever those stretch Mercedes were called. He had all kinds of cars, and he bought, like I said, it was a 68, either GT 500 or GT 350 that he picked up at auction for a song, and then immediately flipped the car. But I was down there one day checking on the progress of my car, and it was right there. And it was that light metallic pea green, and it was gorgeous, man, with the rocker stripes and, you know.
Really, really nice.
Yeah, it's a really nice offbeat color for a Mustang. I like it a lot. So,
well, hey, listen, guys, this has been so much fun. Rob, we love having you on. Every time you come on, we can talk for hours and hours.
Yeah, we certainly could. And I gladly accept your invitation every time. I love doing this with you guys. It's fun. And I'm glad we got a chance to go over my latest rare rides, which I was very happy with. And I hope you all enjoy. Should be
what might be
definitely
fun and I don't know. Guys, tell us in the comments if this would be cool. We'll have Rob on, like, have his screen on screen building cars using the different configurators, and then we can just all argue about it.
Yeah, there you go.
Like, I'm not being sarcastic. I think that would be kind of fun.
Oh,
yeah,
I think so too.
Twister orange Mustang.
I actually would challenge you to say all three of us might build one of varying make, maybe, and see who could build the best for the least amount of money, or maybe we can set some parameters.
I'm really, really good at it. I warn you guys. Like, I've got it down to the science. There's like reasons behind my choices, you know.
Okay.
Like, a particular color might be an homage to, you know, something in the past. Like, I do tricky stuff like that.
All right. Yes. Like Greg said, guys, drop comments in the comment section below and let us know what parameters you want us to search for, or Rob specifically. Let us know what you want to see built, and yeah, maybe we'll revisit that idea.
I get Dodge.
I'll take Ford. I've spent,
guys,
I don't know how many months I spent on Ford's configurator.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. That's easy.
Yeah. I had gotten myself, I was this close to really seriously considering a Bullet, like a 2019 Bullet. There's not a lot of option space in that car because it basically comes fully equipped, but there's a little you can mess with it.
What do you think of that new Mach 1?
Yes. Yeah. What about a Mach 1? I mean, it's the same car, more or less. But
yeah, more or
honestly,
less.
I think I prefer the Mach 1 name to the Bullet name.
Yeah. Is the Mach 1 up yet? On there?
Yeah, I believe it went up like Tuesday.
Okay.
Can I say, I love the wheels on the new Mach 1.
I'm gonna go build.
They're so badass.
Yeah.
But
like Prager style kind
of.
No.
They're like mesh, kind of like.
I gotta go right now. I gotta go, guys. We gotta go.
We're gonna see him just like log off. Yeah. He's like, nope, sorry, gotta go build it.
Guys, if you haven't yet, go check out streetmusclemag.com. Find the latest edition of Rare Rides. Check out the Hurst Olds and let us know what you think in the comments section below. Until next time, Rob.
Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thank you, Greg, for your Google skills. Straightening out that Linda Vaughn is in fact still alive and well. We appreciate that, and everything else you do, Greg, and Vinny. Well, everybody knows you're the greatest editor there is. So,
thank you, man. I appreciate it, and we look forward to having you on again.
You got it. Take care, guys.
You too, man. By designing, engineering, and building the most powerful, reliable, and advanced centrifugal superchargers on the market, ProCharger has been the industry's leading aftermarket supercharger manufacturer for 25 years. No matter if you're looking for 3,500 plus horsepower for a record-setting Pro Mod, or looking for a DIY system for your street car, truck, or motorcycle, ProCharger has the perfect supercharger system for you. For more information on all the amazing ways you can bolt on 40, 50, 60, or even 100% more power to your ride, visit procharger.com. Well, there you have it, Greg. Rob Finkelman, episode 3 that he's been on. Always a pleasure talking about the Hurst Olds, man. Very, very cool car. I feel honored to read those excerpts for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you kind of liked the way that we formatted this episode, and collaborated with Rob, and just read a section, let him elaborate on his thoughts, writing that section, read another section, let him elaborate on his thoughts. Thought it was kind of cool.
Personally, I liked it. I mean, I so if I like it, I'm assuming other people like it. I don't know.
Same, man. Same. I mean, that's been like the guiding light since I've been the editor of Street Muscle, right? Like, try to look at it as an enthusiast first, what I'd like to see as far as content, and then just roll with that, man.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of different rabbit holes that we could have gone down, always with Rob. But
could have. We did go down a lot.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, talking about SNL and stuff in the beginning. But no, I mean, specifically about the car. You know what I mean? Like, just the design process back in the day, the guys that were involved. I thought that was really cool. Something that not a lot of people know about, and it's an important part of automotive history and history in general. So I think it's cool to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and the cool thing is there's still modern, Hurst editions. I mean, granted, maybe they're not quite as special, but still.
Which one comes to mind when you think about them?
There was a 5th gen, and I don't know why.
Yeah, 5th gen Camaro.
That one is solidified in my head.
I just think it's rad, like the little logo, you know what I mean? You get the badge on the fenders, and you get the Hurst, short shifter inside the car. Because you know what? I just published an article rather, reviewing the Hellcat 2020. And one of the things that I really dislike about most manual cars is the stock shifter. Very few manufacturers get it right. And maybe I'm being too critical. I think they do get it right in the sense that they're like trying to cater to a larger market than just like the performance driver, right? So if you have someone who's not as experienced driving a stick, then you're going to have a little bit more slop in that shifter, or a little bit more play that kind of acts as like a buffer zone, or like you're going to have an added friction zone in the clutch. It's just going to make it easier to drive, right? So typically when I buy a new car or a manual or whatever, that's like the first thing I swap out is the shifter. I always swap out the shifter because I just don't like them.
Yeah.
Full circle, the one in the Hellcat was fantastic. I really liked it. Satisfying click with every shift. So,
well, I mean, if you want to feel a bad shifter, go find a Porsche 924.
Is that right?
That's that. I mean, let's not even get into the fact that for the 924 and the 928, they've got those goofy shift patterns. Just the fact that it's a 9-foot shift, you can move about 3 feet between, even though it's in gear. No, it's awful.
I'm not a Porsche guy. What do you mean by like a weird shift pattern? It's not a normal H pattern?
I mean, it's H, but you start in first, down and to the left, second, third, fourth, fifth.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
That's weird. That's like, have you ever seen that episode of The Simpsons where Homer goes to buy like a used car, and and he buys it from like this sketchy European dude. Doesn't really say like what country he's from, but he's measuring like distance in hectares, and he tells him, it runs on like, it gets so many gallons of kerosene, and then he shows him the shifter, and he's like struggling, and it's like grinding and stuff. And he's like, yeah, just put it in H. I don't know. That's how I'd feel trying to drive a Porsche like that.
I mean, but honestly, anything is better than the old school, like early 2000s, where short shifters were like to the extreme, where it was like you had to like lean over and tie your shoe to shift because they just cut the stick down. It was like, oh, and you're shifting like this because there is no room for your hand. Yeah.
Yeah. What?
That was
the first car that I put a short shifter in, where I was like, oh, why don't they put these in every car? Was a New Edge that I had. And it was so easy to swap the shifter on that thing. When I did the short shifter on my 5th gen Camaro, it was kind of a pain. I mean, it wasn't that difficult, but you had to get underneath the car, and there's like some boots that you have to remove. There's a pain in the fact that you had to like lie on your back under the car. Yeah. But on that New Edge, I'm not. What trans comes in those things?
T45, I believe.
Okay, so
I think the shifters were very similar to the T5, where it's just a plate and you just bolt it up.
A top plate, and you just pop the new one in. It was so easy.
Well, there's a trick with that too. You can take the shifter off and actually fill the trans that way.
Yeah.
Instead of fighting with the top fill hole. I mean, after doing that like 2 or 3 times, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get a funnel and report from inside the car. This is easier.
No, it's way easier. I mean, the center console's all just a bunch of clips. You just pull it out, and then if you already have a short shifter in there, it's like even easier. But yeah, I remember swapping it out, and I was like, oh wow, this is like a world of difference. The factory shifter on those things is like this big, long, like S snake kind of thing that brings it up to you. You don't even have to move your arm.
Yeah.
But anyways, that reminds me, I think I need to swap out the fluid in my 5th gen.
Probably not a bad idea. If you think you might need to, you probably need to.
Well, it's been shifting fine, but like it is almost like it's like 190,000 something miles on it, and who knows if it's ever been changed.
Yeah, maybe,
So,
maybe change it. Just to
yeah.
be safe.
I'll run it.
I would say the past 3 different fills, so 2 changes on my T5, have a total of maybe 100. No, I can't say that. Maybe 300 miles on between. Just because
really?
those 300 miles happen to be, 4 and 5 years.
Oh, okay, I got you. Well, like, so obviously the answer is going to be, well, check your owner's manual. But what are the intervals for a TR6060? I wonder. Probably what, 100,000, 150,
I really don't know.
125.
Yeah, I don't know when you're supposed to.
Yeah.
I mean,
You know what? I got a notice from Chevy the other day. Some kind of recall for that
recall
for that 10-year-old car, dude. I couldn't believe it.
I'd be a little worried about that. If they're issuing a 10-year-old recall,
that's what I was thinking. I was like, what
take
the
care
hell?
of it.
It's let me read the thing. What did it say?
So I got a recall on the 2020 for the backup camera. Since when is a backup camera considered like recall worthy? That blows me away. That level of technology is now considered standard safety equipment.
Let me see if my address is on here. Yeah, let me cover it. Okay, so yeah, I got this notice in the mail. And it says, as a valued Chevrolet owner, we want to let you know that GM is committed to quality products and customer satisfaction. According to our records, as of December 2020, service has not been completed on the following open recalls for your Chevrolet Camaro. And it's N140294 ignition key. So anybody at home who has taken their car in, let us know in the comment section what this is all about. I guess I'll take mine in. I just got this the other day, so kind of weird.
Yeah,
I wonder
ignition recalls, I wouldn't mess around with those. I remember one time I ignored a recall and my ignition froze up, and I was a solid 80 miles from home and 20 miles from the nearest dealership, and that sucked.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to Google that one. Anyways, I know Chevy will take care of me. It's the bow tie, man. Got to back the bow tie. But anyways, man, as we wrap up this episode, I want to take a quick moment to thank our sponsors one more time. We got Performance Distributors, always holding it down for the electronics, whether you got new or old. Pro Charger, of course, you guys saw the ad in the beginning of the episode. And I mean, whether you want to make super big power building a pro mod, like we said, or you're just an enthusiast and you want to add a blower and throw some boost on your car, truck, or even motorcycle, check them out, procharger.com. And of course, we have ARP, always holding it down with a bunch of hardware that Greg, you've used on multiple projects. I've used as well. And you have it going on a couple of projects right now, right?
Yeah, it's going on LS 5.0. That's actually why it's still at the machine shop, is so we could do that. And then it'll be going on the small block Ford, which we haven't really publicly discussed yet. I mean, it's been on Instagram, so they know it's there.
Right on.
Yeah. So
so they're
have all ARP stuff.
Yeah, they're supplying all the hardware there. If you guys want to check them out and their whole line of products, go to arp-bolts.com. And one more time, procharger.com and performancedistributors.com. So as we draw to a close, Greg, I guess we'll just give a shout out to next week. You guys want to come back, check out the latest on the RodCAST at noon Pacific time. We air every Friday on YouTube and Facebook. So wherever you're watching this, go to the other channel and give us a like, comment, subscribe. Check out the description, the section below. Hit the notification bell. Am I missing anything, Greg?
Nope. I think you got everything.
Yeah, leave us some love in the comment section, you guys. Let us know who you want to see on the show next week. All right.